They thought they could erase us. When my father died, my aunt in New Jersey forged his will and stole everything. Our house, our savings, our name. For years, I watched her and her daughter thrive in the life that was supposed to be mine. But on her daughter's big day, the wedding of the year, I gave them a gift they'll never forget. This is not just a story of betrayal. It's a story of a quiet girl who turned silence into vengeance and destroyed the very people who stole her world. My name is Faiza Khan. I was born and raised in a small suburb outside Trenton, New Jersey, to a quiet, hardworking Pakistani-American family. My father, Dr. Saeed Khan, was a respected high school physics teacher. My mother stayed home, took care of me and our little garden, and always made sure dinner was warm by the time my dad got home. We weren't rich. We didn't wear fancy clothes or go on vacations. But we were solid, steady, safe. At least we were. Until the day my father collapsed in our driveway. It was a Saturday afternoon. He had just come home from the grocery store, smiling like always, paper bags in hand. He bent down to pick up an orange that had rolled out of the bag and never stood back up. I was 17. I remember screaming so loud my throat ripped. My mother dropped the plate she was holding. Neighbors came running. An ambulance arrived. But nothing could bring him back. The heart attack was massive. Sudden. Final. Just like that, he was gone. In a single breath, the center of our world vanished. And in the silence that followed, someone else stepped in to take his place. Her name was Tahira, my father's younger sister. Tahira lived in another part of Jersey with her husband and daughter, Nayab. She was flashy, loud, always dripping in gold and perfume. She'd visit us once every few months, and whenever she did, I could feel this strange tension fill the room. She'd make these subtle comments. Saeed, you work too hard. Why not invest? Why not think bigger? Your house is nice, but imagine living in Princeton. The schools there are amazing. Faiza should learn to carry herself better. Girls these days need to be more presentable. My mother would smile tightly. My dad would nod and say nothing. Now I realize he didn't trust her. But I never knew how deep that mistrust went until after he died. Tahira arrived at our home the day after the funeral, dressed in a perfectly ironed white suit, red lipstick, matching handbag, and dark sunglasses. While my mother and I were still in sweatpants and slippers, trying to process our grief, she swept in like a storm with a lawyer. And a document. A will. Apparently, my father had left everything. The house, the savings, even the small land parcel he had invested in back in Islamabad, to Tahira. I thought it was a sick joke. But the papers were stamped. Signed. Dated. Legal. I remember my mom whispering, "This isn't real." He would never leave Faiza with nothing. But there it was, in black and white. Everything we owned, including the house I'd lived in my entire life, belonged to Tahira now. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, Bobby. You can stay a few more weeks. But after that, well, you know how it is. Legal matters." Legal matters. She used that term like it meant nothing. Like it wasn't the reason we were about to be homeless. We moved out by the end of the month. My mother sold her wedding jewelry to rent a small, one-bedroom apartment behind a Desi grocery store. The walls were thin, the ceiling leaked, and I could hear the constant hum of refrigerators through the floorboards at night. It was the first time I saw my mother cry herself to sleep. And I didn't cry. I burned. I didn't care about the house, the furniture, or the money. I cared that my father's name was being erased. That my mother's silence was being mistaken for weakness. That I, a 17-year-old girl, was expected to forget. But I didn't. Not for a single second. While my aunt wore my mother's gold bangles, while her daughter Nayab posted mirror selfies from my old bedroom, I was plotting. Quietly. Patiently. Because the thing about fire is, it doesn't have to roar to destroy. Sometimes it waits. The years passed slowly. I went to Rutgers on a scholarship, took night shifts at a gas station, tutored kids on weekends, saved every penny. Nayab, meanwhile, became the star of our extended family. She got into fashion marketing, posted luxury hauls on Instagram, vacationed in Miami, drove a white BMW. Every time I saw her name in group chats, at weddings, on wedding cards, my stomach twisted. She had my life, but I let it happen because I knew, eventually, I would return it to her. With interest. For years later, the news broke. Nayab was getting married to Salman Iqbal, son of a real estate mogul based in Chicago. The wedding would be in Princeton. The venue? The same garden center where my father once took me to pick tulips. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I showed up anyway, wearing black, eyes steady, back straight. I was no longer the shy girl from 4 years ago. I was a woman now. A woman with a story to tell and a secret to reveal. But I didn't walk in with a gun or a scream. I walked in with a USB drive. Inside it was a video clip, a voice recording, crackly but clear. Tahira in conversation with her investment advisor, unaware the call had been recorded, talking about how she had forged my father's signature, how she had bribed a notary, how she had handled the will issue before the family even knew he was dead. It was real, raw, and about to ruin everything. But I didn't play it at the wedding. No, that would have been too easy. I waited for the night after the wedding, for Nayab's honeymoon suite. That's when the storm would really begin. My name is Faiza Khan, and last night, my cousin Nayab, the same girl who grew up in the house stolen from me, got married in front of hundreds of guests. She wore a designer lehenga that my mother's gold paid for. She walked down the aisle lined with fresh orchids, imported from Thailand. The chandeliers above her shimmered, the same ones I had once stared at when I was 10, visiting that venue with my parents. And tonight, she was supposed to begin her fairy tale, but I had a different ending in mind. Let me back up a little. The wedding went perfectly. Glowing bride, charming groom, guests praising everything from the catering to the decor. No drama, no mistakes, no missteps. Because I stayed quiet. I sat near the back, dressed in a long black shawl. No one noticed me. No one remembered my face. They had forgotten what it feels like when someone they buried comes back to life. I watched Nayab laugh, hug her friends, show off her ring. Watched Tahira, my aunt, glowing with pride as if her years of betrayal had finally been worth it. She had won. She thought the story ended here. But I had just turned the page. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in my cheap motel room, 10 miles from the wedding venue. Sat at the desk, looking at the USB in my hand, listening to the audio again and again just to remind myself. This isn't pettiness. This is justice. I waited until morning, and then I made my move. The Intercontinental Hotel, Princeton. Room 1204. Honeymoon suite. That's where Nayab and Salman were staying. I didn't walk up to the door. Didn't make a scene. I left the gift box at the front desk with a smile and a fake name. Inside the box, a luxury pen set, engraved with "To a Perfect Couple," and the USB. Attached was a handwritten note. Dear Salman, congratulations on your wedding. Before you take the next step in building your future, I thought you might want to understand how your bride's family built theirs. Just press play. That was it. No threats. No drama. Just the truth. And the truth does all the work for you. I didn't hear anything until the next afternoon. That's when my phone exploded. First a call from an unknown Chicago number. Then a string of missed calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Then the group chats started lighting up. And finally the headlines. Real estate heir's wedding ends in chaos after shocking reveal. Viral recording exposes Pakistani-American woman's property fraud. By 4 p.m., the video had leaked on TikTok. It wasn't just the recording anymore. It was the reaction. Salman, livid, storming out of the suite, screaming in the hotel hallway. Nayab crying, begging, insisting it was all lies. Hotel staff trying to calm the scene. Other guests filming. A mess. A beautiful, poetic, full-circle mess. By evening, I was back in my motel room, watching it all unfold on my screen. Every person who had turned their back on me and my mother was now tagging each other in the videos, forwarding articles, debating over WhatsApp. The same aunts who had once called my mom overly sensitive were now sending her screenshots. Even the family lawyer, the one who had sided with Tahira years ago, released a statement distancing himself. And Tahira?
Gone.
Just vanished from every platform. No statement.
No epaleri.
She had built her life on silence and lies. And I had destroyed it with the same tools. 2 days later, there was a knock at our apartment door. I opened it to find Nayab.
No makeup. No jewelry.
Dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling, mascara smudged. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like a ghost. Then, she got down on her knees and said,
Please.
Just please stop this. My marriage is over. My mother's name is ruined. I can't show my face anywhere. Please, Faiza, please forgive us. My mother came out of her room, quiet and calm, and she said the one sentence I'll never forget. Forgiveness doesn't undo theft, especially when you stole everything we ever had. Nayab sobbed, apologized again, left with her head hanging. We didn't stop her. We didn't console her. We watched her walk down the stairs, the same way we had walked down the steps of our old home years ago after being thrown out. You might ask, do I feel better? Not exactly, but I feel something different.
Peace.
Because justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it just shows up wearing black, holding a USB. And sometimes that's enough. It had only been 48 hours since the engagement party when the real damage began. At first, it was just whispers, polite ones. Gossip from the kind of guests who wore pearls and smiled too wide. They messaged each other. Did you see that video? Was that her father in prison? Do you think Daniel knew? Then the comments turned public. Every social media post Nayab had ever made, every photo of a designer handbag, every inspirational caption about building from nothing, every glamorous shoot in her fake starter apartment was now getting quote tweeted with one word. #inheritance thief. I made sure of it. I had already set up a few anonymous TikTok accounts, stitched together clips of her lies with receipts from public records. Then I released them on a strict schedule, one post every 4 hours, each one more damning than the last. But the real power? That came from other people. By day 3, influencers who had once collaborated with Nayab were deleting their collabs. By day 4, BuzzFeed Lifestyle had run an article. Did this influencer build her career on a stolen legacy? And by day 5, Romano Properties released a public statement. We were unaware of the allegations tied to Ms. Nayab Qureshi and have paused all wedding planning until the matter is privately resolved. That meant the wedding was off. But I wasn't done, because Nayab still had something I didn't. Her mother.
Tahira.
The woman who orchestrated it all, forged the will, and destroyed my mother's life, was still living in the house she stole. I couldn't just humiliate them. I needed to take everything back. So I filed something I'd been working on for almost a year, a civil lawsuit.
Forgery. Fraud.
Emotional damages. I thought I knew the story. My father died. My aunt stole everything. And I was left to rebuild, piece by piece, with revenge as my only compass. But I was wrong, because during the discovery phase of the civil trial, buried in the court-ordered evidence boxes, beneath years of paperwork, property records, and financial statements, I found something that stopped me cold. It was a safety deposit record. A single entry, signed and time-stamped, dated 3 days before my father died. He had opened a private box under his name and listed a secondary access holder. Not my mom. Not me. Not Tahira. It was a name I didn't recognize. Maya Sinclair. I stared at it for hours. Ran every search I could. There was no Maya Sinclair in our family, our neighborhood, or my father's business records. The name didn't exist until it did. Because with some digging, I found her. A woman in her late 30s, living in Brooklyn. A former paralegal.
No social media.
No public record after 2015. But her email still worked. I sent one message. My name is Layla Khan. I believe you knew my father, Imran Khan. Please, I just want to understand. She replied within the hour. 3 days later, we met at a small coffee shop in Williamsburg. She wore no makeup. Her coat looked worn. And when she saw me, she didn't smile. She exhaled. I was wondering when this day would come, she said. Then she told me everything. My father had been helping her, secretly. Maya had worked for a legal firm in Jersey City, where she discovered financial irregularities in client accounts tied to a man named Ahmed Qureshi.
Yes.
Tahira's husband. Nayab's father. The man they claimed had been abroad for business for years. He wasn't in Europe. He was hiding from prosecution. Maya had gone to my father because she knew him from a charity case he'd supported years ago. She trusted him. He kept copies of her evidence. He paid for her relocation. Protected her. Quietly. He never told us because he wanted to keep us safe. And then, just as he planned to submit everything to the state attorney's office,
He died.
suddenly,
Conveniently.
the timing was too perfect. Too clean. Maya, I asked slowly, my throat tightening, do you think he was? I don't know, she whispered. But it never felt like just a heart attack. That changed everything. I had been so focused on the will, the theft, the eviction, I never looked at my father's death closely.
But now?
I had to. I requested his medical records, his toxicology report. And after weeks of legal back and forth, I got them. What I found made my blood run cold. His toxicology flagged an irregularity. A compound called digitoxin, rare, plant-based, used in small doses to treat heart conditions. Too much of it, it stops the heart. It had been dismissed as a therapeutic dosage. But paired with Maya's story, it looked more like a murder. I couldn't breathe. I had come for revenge. But now I wanted something more. Answers. And I was willing to burn everything to get them. They say grief clouds your judgment. But sometimes it just delays your rage. After Maya told me about her connection to my dad, and after I saw that toxicology report with my own eyes, I stopped sleeping. I kept rereading the same sentence over and over again. Presence of digitoxin in subtherapeutic levels. Subtherapeutic. Harmless. Unless it wasn't accidental. I requested more files. Dug deeper into his hospital admission the night he died. My father had been rushed to St. Clair's Hospital in Jersey City at 11:46 p.m. He was pronounced dead at 1:03 a.m. A routine heart failure, they'd said. But when I got his medical chart, there was a note.
Short.
Handwritten. Faded in ink. Patient was conscious. Anxious. Repeatedly asked for Nurse R. Diaz. Said she knew everything.
Nurse R. Diaz.
She wasn't mentioned in the official nursing logs. She wasn't on the hospital staff directory anymore either. But her name was real. Reina Diaz. And 6 months after my father's death, she had resigned. 2 months later, she disappeared. No forwarding address. No known employer. Nothing. I drove to St. Clair's myself. Asked around, pretended to be a journalist writing a piece about patient advocacy. Most staff said they didn't remember her. One orderly said, "Oh yeah, the pretty one." Quiet. Left quick. No one knows why. But then, the break came from where I least expected it.
Her Instagram.
Deactivated years ago, but still cached in a forgotten data archive. One post. Just one. A picture of a parking pass. Dated the week my father died. The caption? I don't feel safe anymore. If anything happens to me, please tell the truth. I froze. She had known something. Maybe about the medication. Maybe about who gave it. And now she was gone. So I did what any digital-era daughter seeking justice would do. I posted the screenshot. Captioned it. If anyone knows where Reina Diaz is, please reach out. You may hold the key to a murder. I didn't expect a reply. But 3 days later, one came. Anonymous. Untraceable. But the message was clear. Stop digging, or you'll end up like your father. I stared at the screen. My fingers went cold. For a moment, I considered backing off. Leaving it. Letting the lawsuit be enough. But then I remembered my mom. How she was evicted in winter. How she cried when no one was watching. How she died thinking justice was impossible. And I knew what I had to do. I had already burned the bridge. Now I was burning the whole road. I was going to find Reina Diaz, even if I had to drag every secret out into the open. Even if the next target was me.it took me 3 weeks for burner counts and a $200 subscription to a background check service to finally find her. Reina Diaz was living under a new name, Elena Cruz, in a small town outside Allentown, Pennsylvania, working at a veterinary clinic. No nursing license anymore. No trace of her old life. Like she had erased herself on purpose. And maybe she had. I showed up on a rainy Wednesday. The clinic was closing. She wore scrubs and carried a tote bag covered in cat hair. I waited by the lot, hands trembling. Reina? She froze. I saw it in her face, the calculation. Fight or flight. She chose neither. Instead, she said softly, I knew someone would come eventually. Just didn't think it'd be you. I told her who I was. She nodded slowly, then said, You better come inside. Inside was quiet, smelled like antiseptic and wet fur. She locked the door behind us, then sat on a stool like she'd been carrying this weight for years. She didn't ask what I wanted. She knew. And then she told me everything. The night my father was brought into the ER, he wasn't unconscious, like the report said. He was awake,
Panicked.
sweating. He told her he thought someone had poisoned him. He said he felt dizzy an hour after drinking a health tonic delivered to his garage by his sister, Tahira. He begged Reina not to log it as a cardiac issue, told her it wasn't normal. He kept saying, They're trying to silence me. Don't let them. She believed him. That's why she kept the vial he threw up in. She ran a toxicology screen herself, unauthorized. Found trace amounts of digitoxin. Dangerous in higher doses. Common in herbal meds, but lethal if misused. She went to her supervisor, who shut her down immediately. The next day, she was placed on unpaid leave, told she violated protocol. Then her car was broken into, her apartment ransacked. No one stole anything valuable, just her notebooks, her hospital badge, and her laptop. She got scared. I knew I was being watched, she said. I wanted to help your family.
I did, but
I was 26, alone. No one believed me, so she disappeared. New name, new life. Never looked back. I asked her why she never came forward, even after the news of our eviction broke. After the forged will. After everything. She looked at me, eyes full of regret. I thought maybe it was too late. Maybe no one would listen. And maybe I'd be next. And then she opened a box. Inside was a sealed evidence bag, with a vial she had kept hidden all these years. It still had a label, from Naab's wellness brand. Suddenly, everything clicked. That tonic Naab used to promote in her early influencer days? The one she claimed helped her mom with heart fatigue. That was the same bottle. They hadn't just stolen from us. They had tested their product on my father.
and buried the results.
I stared at Reina. My hands were shaking. She said, I'll testify. If this goes to court, I'll come. I'm done hiding. And for the first time in years, I felt something dangerous bloom in my chest.
Hope.
But hope, I'd learned, was never safe. Because that night, when I got back to my car, the windshield had been smashed, and a note was left behind. You were warned. Stop. I wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. Now it was war. You don't realize how fast the internet can turn on you until it does. After Reina agreed to testify, and after I had that glass vial in my hands, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I went public. I uploaded everything. Heavy checkmark the hospital records Reina had saved. Heavy checkmark a video of her confession, her face blurred for safety. Heavy checkmark screenshots of Naab's old wellness brand website. Heavy checkmark and a side-by-side image of the tonic bottle, the exact one my dad had taken. I captioned it simply. They said it was heart failure. It was digitoxin poisoning. And my aunt and cousin made sure no one ever found out. Not anymore. And then I hit upload. Within hours, it exploded. Some people called me brave. Others called me insane. But what went most viral wasn't even my post. It was the duets. People breaking down the bottle's ingredients. Medical influencers discussing digitoxin toxicity. Nurses coming forward with similar stories of being silenced. It lit a fire I hadn't seen coming. And that's when they hit back. First came the fake stories. That I'd been arrested for shoplifting. That Reina had been fired for malpractice. That my dad had actually written a second will, and this was all a money grab. Then came the bots. Thousands of comments calling me a liar, a sociopath, an opportunist. Nayab and Tahira released a joint statement. We are heartbroken over the lies being spread in a moment meant for healing and family. We will not be bullied. But I wasn't the only one speaking. A former employee from Nayab's company came forward anonymously. She said the wellness tonic had failed FDA approval and was quietly pulled after an internal scare. Then Reina's old roommate posted a video, confirming the break-in, the paranoia, the moment Reina fled town. People were connecting the dots. And I was winning the narrative. Until the lawsuit hit. Defamation. Filed in federal court. Nayab and Tahira versus me. They were trying to bleed me dry. But I had one advantage they hadn't counted on. Amin. The quiet cousin. The one they thought they'd neutralized years ago. He messaged me 2 days after the lawsuit went public. I have something. Meet me at the house. The attic. I hadn't been to our family home in years. When I got there, it was dark, dusty, abandoned since the court ordered us out. Amin was already there, flashlight in hand. He pulled down the attic stairs, climbed up, and handed me a shoebox. Inside, cassette tapes. Labeled in my dad's handwriting. Nayab, meeting, September 10th. Tahira phone call, urgent. Will revision talk, do not use. He said, I found them in the floorboards. He must have recorded everything. And suddenly, I wasn't just fighting for truth. I was holding it. The tapes weren't just dusty cassettes. They were time bombs. I spent the whole night digitizing them. Every hiss and click. Every word my father said. And what I heard shattered me. On the first tape, my dad confronted Nayab about her product. Told her it wasn't ready. That it could kill someone. That it had. She dismissed him. Said he was paranoid. It's just herbal, she laughed. On the next, he spoke with Tahira. Pleaded with her to stop pushing the tonic. She said, we're too far in. You should have thought of this before giving them seed money. And then came the last tape. A meeting in the garage. Dad, Nayab, Tahira, and someone else. A voice I didn't recognize. They talked about changing the will. Removing Layla. One voice said. Keeping it clean. My dad protested.
Said no.
He was firm. The last thing I heard him say was, if anything happens to me, these tapes go public. Then the tape cut. I sat there, stunned. They didn't just steal from us. They plotted it, planned it, executed it. The next morning, I met Amin again. We uploaded the tapes to a private server. And I sent clips to every journalist who had ever emailed me. A week later, the New York Times ran the headline, Family Fortune Scandal. Tapes reveal poison, fraud, and a forged will. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Because the moment truth goes viral, so does danger. But the story was no longer mine alone. It was the nation's. And the reckoning was just beginning. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and nerves. The kind of place where truth gets filtered through procedure. Where justice wears a suit and a smirk. Where everyone pretends this is just another case, not the unraveling of a dynasty. I walked in wearing black. Not for drama, but for memory. Because I remembered the last time I was here. Months ago. When they tossed out my petition like it was trash. When Tahira smirked from the back bench. When Nayab didn't even bother to show up.
But now?
Now the courtroom was packed. Every news station had sent someone. Bloggers were live tweeting from the hallways. Even Reddit threads were tracking the court documents like it was a murder trial. Because it almost was. The tapes had changed everything. They weren't just gossip anymore. They were evidence. And for the first time, Nayab and Tahira couldn't hide. Their lawyer wore confidence, like a cologne. All polished phrases and charming shrugs. He argued that the tapes were inadmissible, that Reina's testimony was inflammatory, that my posts had irreparably damaged Naab's brand. But our lawyer? He was bettered. He didn't play defense. He played offense. One by one, we laid it out. Heavy checkmark Reina's sworn affidavit, corroborated by her old hospital supervisor, who had finally agreed to speak. Heavy checkmark the toxicology report from the original vial, tested by an independent lab. Heavy checkmark digital metadata proving the tapes weren't doctored. Heavy checkmark emails recovered from Amin's old laptop, showing draft versions of the fake will. And then the bombshell. A new witness. The unknown voice from the tape? It was a paralegal. Someone Tahira had hired, and then paid off, to quietly draft a new will months before my father's death. He testified, said he had felt sick about it for years. And now, with immunity, he confirmed everything. The room went silent. Even Naab's expression cracked. For the first time I saw it.
Fear.
But the courtroom isn't like a movie. There's no dramatic gavel bang. No gasps. Just motions and countermotions. Objections and recesses. So when the judge called for a break, I stepped outside. And that's when I saw her. Standing across the street.
Mom.
She hadn't spoken to me in over a year. Not since the funeral. Not since she sided with Tahira to keep the peace. But here she was. Gray coat. Pale face. Hands trembling as she clutched her purse. I walked up slowly.
She didn't speak.
Just handed me an envelope. Inside, a photo.
Me.
As a kid. Sitting in Dad's lap. At his old garage desk. On the back, in his handwriting. Everything I built was for her. If they take that away, they take me too. I looked up, tears blurring my eyes. Mom whispered, I was wrong. And walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. Because tomorrow was closing arguments. And I knew, win or lose, the verdict would change everything. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant. It was the kind of place where time didn't move, just ticked, slow and suffocating. I had been in that deposition room for 6 hours already. But I didn't care. Because sitting across from me were Naab and Tahira. Their lawyer looked like he charged by the breath. Crisp navy suit, gold cufflinks, voice oiled smooth. But it was Naab who did most of the talking, polished, practiced, just like she always was. She smiled like a saint, spoke like a victim. But I wasn't there to argue. I was there to watch them lie. And log every second of it. They denied everything. Claimed the tapes were fake, that the voice wasn't theirs. That I'd weaponized grief into vengeance. Tahira even pretended to cry. I would have laughed if I hadn't been so disgusted. Then my lawyer leaned in and pressed play. It was the segment where Naab called the tonic just herbal and laughed while Dad begged her to stop. The room went silent. Naab's face turned pale. Her lawyer called for a break. I stepped outside, heart pounding, phone buzzing like a hive. Twitter was on fire. Every tape was now public. People were splicing them into reels, quoting them on protest signs, even remixing them into TikTok audios. A new one had started trending. Musical note, it's just herbal. Musical note, he gave us seed money. Musical note, remove Layla. Keep it clean. The internet wasn't just angry now. It was relentless. And for once, it wasn't turning on me. But the court battle was just one front. Because the real war? That was happening behind the scenes. I got an encrypted message that night. From a whistleblower inside the FDA. He said, "You're not wrong. We flagged the tonic 3 years ago. But it got buried." I asked why. He sent one word. Lobbyists. And suddenly I understood. Naab's wellness brand hadn't just been a scam. It was a machine. Fueled by money, lawyers, political favors, and silence. But silence, I had learned, is breakable. I set up a meeting with the whistleblower the next day. We met in a parking garage. Yes, like a cliché, but that's how scared he was. He handed me a thumb drive. Inside, emails, internal memos, testing results. All proving the tonic had failed 3 different trials. All swept away. I asked him why he was doing this now. He said, because someone finally stood up. And I realized something then. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was revolution. The next deposition was different. Tahira's hands were shaking. Nayab barely spoke. Their lawyer looked tired, like he could see where this was going. That's when Reina entered the room. For the first time in years, she stood face to face with the people who made her vanish. She didn't flinch. She told them, under oath, what my father said, what she saw, what she found. She handed over the original vial. She confirmed the break-in, the threats, everything. When she finished, Nayab didn't even look at her. She just said, "You're ruining our family." And Reina? She smiled.
Calm. Clear.
She said, "No, you did that. I'm just done pretending." By the time we walked out of that courthouse, the world outside had changed. Protesters lined the streets. News crews camped at every exit. One banner caught my eye. "Justice for Mr. Hanif. Jail the healers." Another had Reina's face. Another had mine. It was surreal. But it wasn't over. Because I still hadn't figured out who the fourth voice on that final tape was. The one in the garage. The one who said, "Remove Layla." That voice didn't belong to Nayab, or Tahira, or my father. It belonged to someone else. Someone still in the shadows. And I was going to find them. Even if it meant burning everything down. It all came down to one last voice. Not Nayab, not Tahira, not even Reina or Dad. The voice that whispered, "Remove Layla," was calm.
Cold. Male.
I replayed that part of the garage recording every night, isolating the grain, the static, trying to trace it. But it wasn't until Amin, quiet, methodical Amin, called me at 3 a.m. that everything finally clicked. "Check the board members," he said. "The ones who stayed silent when the FDA pulled out." I did. And there he was. Uncle Armin. My dad's older brother. The family's clean one. The one who vanished from the company just before the scandal broke. He didn't just know what Nayab was doing, he funded her. The final betrayal. I confronted him at his house in Connecticut. He didn't deny it. He just poured himself a drink and said, "You don't understand how business works, Layla." I said, "No, I understand exactly how you work." He tried to spin it, that my father was unstable, that Reina was confused, that I was emotional, that it was all meant to be contained. "You were never supposed to get hurt," he said. And that's when I realized he still didn't get it. He still thought this was about me. I left the house, drove straight to the press. I gave them everything. The garage tape, the FDA whistleblowers' files, the family memos, the investment trails. And I added one last line.
My name is Layla Hanif.
My father didn't die of heart failure. He died of silence. And I won't let that silence win. The fallout was swift. Uncle Armin was subpoenaed. Nayab's assets were frozen. Tahira was arrested for evidence tampering. The wellness company crumbled within 72 hours. Its stock delisted, headquarters shuttered, influencers deleting old posts like it was radioactive. And Reina? She got her job back, her name back, and her voice. 1 month later, I stood by my father's grave. No camera, no mic, no post to go viral. Just me and the wind. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. "It's over." But even then, I knew it wasn't really over. Because justice doesn't fix everything. It doesn't give you your father back. It doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't make the world soft again, but it makes it honest. And sometimes that's enough. Fade to black. Text on screen. In the months following Layla's testimony, the Hanif wellness scandal became a national reckoning. Over 200 victims came forward. 2 Senate hearings were launched. The FDA reformed its supplement regulations. And Reina? She now runs a foundation for medical whistleblowers. As for Layla, she disappeared from the public eye. But her voice lives on, in every truth told too late, and every silence finally broken. If you like my video, so please subscribe for more stories.